In today's video, Democrats are now calling for the impeachment of President Trump. Also, it has now been exposed who's paying protesters to disrupt Republican town halls. And President Trump met with Zelensky this morning at Pope Francis' funeral.
Why are there no calls for impeachment? This is unacceptable. I will not live in an authoritative country, and neither will any of these people. You can do more. I like you, and I will vote for you if you are brave and you do what we need. We need him impeached. We need him removed.
There is no doubt that this president's conduct has already exceeded any prior standard for impeachment by the United States House of Representatives. I agree with you, and I regret if this is an unwelcome response, but my job is to be honest with you. The only way to achieve what you want to achieve is to have a majority in the United States House of Representatives.
Now, in our first story, it is very clear that Democrats are not reacting well to Judge Hannah Duggan's arrest from yesterday. We know that she helped a illegal alien evade ICE arrest. And as a result, they want President Trump impeached. However, the problem is America is not going to support it because we see the sham in these impeachments. That's number one. And number two, they're not even in power in order to make that happen. But that doesn't mean they're going to give up. What they're doing is strategizing in a way to convince most of the country that an impeachment needs to happen.
I'm going to be completely real. So first off, if articles of impeachment were filed in the House right now, they would go nowhere. They wouldn't even get a hearing. There would be no conversation about it. There wouldn't be a hearing on it. There would not be a dialogue in a formal matter, in a formal way in the House. We have to fight hard, and we have to fight smart. I believe this president has violated the law and violated the Constitution. We have to convince the rest of this country, we have to convince more people in this country, not just that this president is doing a bad job, which we are doing, and we are doing successfully, but we have to convince people that him violating the law and the Constitution matters and requires urgent action. I doubt that the public is with us at this point on that issue yet.
And I think that says something about how delusional they are, right? If we just stay with that word delusional, if most of the country does not agree with impeaching President Trump, I guess it begs the question, who's off base here? You guys or half the country? I mean, let's just do the simple math here. And this confirms that Democrats are all about stopping President Trump and not about actually helping everyday Americans. Now, they justify this behavior because they claim that the way that the DOJ is handling these deportations, it's offensive. The way they've been responding to the court is offensive. But what about the American citizens who have been negatively impacted by these illegal aliens? Isn't that offensive?
But what really offends me is the Department of Justice, where I worked for almost 30 years, willfully violated a court order, and they lied in court about their justification or their lack of knowledge. That should bother you more than anything else, my friend.
We really gotta go. Let me tell you what offends me.
Yeah,
is that there are people, political parties in this country dedicated to re-importing illegal aliens hand over fist, and it is outrageous. That's what offends me.
That's great rhetoric, but it ain't true.
All right, we gotta leave it. We gotta leave it there, guys.
Great rhetoric.
Democrats.
That's the main point that Democrats continue to miss. American people are offended that Democrats are flying down to El Salvador and trying to bring back an illegal alien who's a confirmed MS-13 gang member, who was alleged to have beaten his wife, who was pulled over for trafficking humans and entered the country illegally. And then on top of all of that, you have 2 judges that have been arrested for harboring and helping illegal aliens evade arrest. Now, you tell me who should be offended in that scenario. However, you have elected officials in Milwaukee who are claiming that this is making their courts in that area unsafe.
I want to be very clear, Chris, that this does nothing to instill trust into our judicial system. Matter of fact, this makes our community less safe. And if we want our community to be less safe, places like our courthouses should be places of safety, a place of refuge, where people are coming to participate in our judicial system. And quite frankly, this sows doubt into our judicial system. That's something, quite frankly, that this Trump administration would like to do. They don't want people participating in our justice system, and they don't want people participating in our system in general when it comes down to voting. And so it's important, again, that we're protecting our due process, protecting the judiciary, because they have been protecting us from these bad policies that he's been trying to put in place. And that's why they're under attack.
Guys, this is the same old Democrat deflection every single time. It goes like this. The thing we disagree with makes our communities less safe, while ignoring the policies that we support have actually made our communities less safe. That's what's happening here, folks. They're defending illegal aliens, okay? They're putting them above the law, all right? Even though they claim that no one is above the law and President Trump should be held accountable. And notice how he didn't even mention the victims that were in the courtroom who were seeking justice against this illegal alien. And guys, let me just tell you what's happening here in real time. Democrats are morally conflicted. They want to accuse the Trump administration of a constitutional crisis, but they have Democrat judges that are actually enabling a constitutional crisis by doing this. Here's an example of what moral confliction looks like.
I want to get to something that Jim brought up. I was a prosecutor for many years, Jim was too. That prosecutor had this case on his docket. He had the victims there in the audience. For the victims, and I'm a big victim advocate, this was a big deal. And the thing that really bothers me about the judge, and I think this is a big mess, is that she adjourned the case without telling the prosecutor and without telling the victims. And whether there's probable cause or beyond a reasonable doubt could convict her, what that to me shows that she was willfully trying to hide that defendant from being arrested. And that bothers me a lot.
See, I told you guys, we always want to show you what both sides are saying. And the fact of the matter is this. If the judge never allowed this individual to leave the courtroom, if the judge had never adjourned the case without the victims getting their due process, by the way, then this wouldn't be a conversation. But the fact that those decisions were made by the judge consciously tells you that the left is the one that's actually behind this constitutional crisis, because some of them are not morally conflicted. They're just delusional. Let me show you an example of that.
People don't like the chaos. And in the same New York Times Santa poll, one of the issues that Donald Trump is really under the water, probably his worst issue, is the Maryland man who is in El Salvador right now. It's something that...
Maryland man?
He is a Maryland man.
Come on.
What I will tell
he
you
is an El Salvadoran citizen. He is
Okay.
not a Maryland man. He is an illegal immigrant living in this country illegally for 14
you can
years.
Say whatever you want to say, Scott, but the American
this
people...
is why the polling is the way it is, because we're lying. We're lying.
We're not lying. The American
Scott,
people...
the peace orders were in Maryland.
Guys,
he was beating his wife.
The American,
You know.
the American people are seeing chaos. They do not like it. And this is immigration might be something that is popular for Trump, and now he's going underwater. But this case specifically is one of his lowest points with
Scott,
the American people.
Is it accurate to call this man a Maryland man?
Scott,
Yes or no? Of course it's not.
You think that it's interesting to me that you think that despite the administration yelling far and wide that this guy is a gang-banging member of MS-13, despite, by the way, no evidence of that, you think that
Have you seen the knuckles?
You know that. Okay, let's.
It's also why he couldn't go back to El Salvador because of gang retaliation.
The tax season is officially here, and the IRS is turning up the heat. With the April 15th deadline fast approaching, now's the time to act. If you've fallen behind on filing or owe back taxes, delay will only make things worse. Every day you wait increases your risk and the consequences. Did you know that with over 5,000 new tax liens filed every day and powerful enforcement tools like property seizures, bank levies is at the disposal of the IRS? This is why it is so important for you to not do this by yourself. Trust my friends at Tax Network USA. They are here to help you take control. Their team of skilled attorneys and seasoned negotiators have resolved over $1 billion in tax debt using proven strategies. And guess what? Your consultation with them is absolutely free. So how do you get started? All you have to do is call 1-800-958-1000 or visit tnusa.com/Devori. The number again is 1-800-958-1000 or click the link in my description below.
So Judge Dugan was in her right in doing what she did. She didn't obstruct justice. She obstructed fascism in this case.
Because you're saying obstructing justice would be if this had been a court order signed by a judge, which it was not. So, as
right.
you know,
Right. Even in that case, it does not make sense. We should not have ICE agents in a protected space like a courtroom any more than you'd want ICE agents going into an operating room or a classroom. Those have historically been protected spaces that are off limits to ICE, and with good reason. You want people feeling safe and secure in a courthouse, either to come to their own trials or to testify against others. And this is really just an attack on the judicial system, which is historically a check and balance on unobstructed executive power. That's what we're seeing from the Trump administration.
And that's why I keep using the word delusion today, because they're continuing to defend this judge and how she clearly obstructed justice. You got people on CNN continuing to call the MS-13 gang member the Maryland man. You got Abby Phillips claiming that there is no evidence that he's an MS-13 gang member. That, ladies and gentlemen, is delusion, which takes us to our second story, which is also delusion. So these GOP town halls that have been erupting into chaos because of protesters and people who claim to be Republicans, well, it has now been exposed that not only have they been getting funded by hedge funds, but that they're getting a script before they go in, meaning pre-screened questions to ask the congressional leader while they're in attendance. Take a look.
Well, the liberal media has found a new hobby in airing videos of loud, boisterous protesters at Republican town halls. Now, they conveniently ignore the animated progressives flooding Democratic events. But nevertheless, new questions have emerged about these supposed angry Republicans shouting down their elected officials. Are these protests truly grassroots, or are they astroturfed? We did some digging and we found out that New York Congressman Mike Lawler is about to have agitators at his upcoming town hall, and a progressive group is behind it.
We could potentially have thousands of people out front dissenting on what he is going to potentially say in terms of lying about his record on cutting Medicaid or lying about the state back and how it harms women. So we want to get out in front for that reason.
Now, if we read into this a little bit more, it's being reported that Indivisible is a national left-wing organization whose local offshoots have been targeting Republican town halls for much of this year, encouraging activists to disrupt the events from both inside and outside. An event listed by Indivisible on the organizing platform Mobilize is advertising a full-day event beginning in New York City and ending at Lawler's town hall on Sunday. Quote, Republicans are planning to cut Medicaid, SNAP, and other vital programs to fund massive tax cuts for billionaires. Congress will be home for April recess and must hear from us, the event's summary read.
This group, Indivisible, says Republicans are planning to cut Medicaid, SNAP, and other vital programs to fund massive tax cuts for billionaires. I mean, are you getting tired of saying it? You're not cutting benefits like Medicaid?
I can't say it any louder or clearer. We are not going to cut benefits for eligible recipients. I have been very clear about protecting those who rely on these critical programs, especially the IDD community, our seniors, children, single mothers. The fact is, these are vital programs that people rely on, and we want to protect them and make sure that they are not being scammed by waste, fraud, and abuse, and seeing, illegal immigrants, for instance, in New York, $1.2 billion being spent on Medicaid benefits for illegal immigrants. We want to make sure that there are work requirements. That's something my constituent Bill Clinton championed in the 90s, and certainly Democrats supported it then, and they should support it now. So we're talking about protecting the integrity of these critical programs while also providing tax relief to middle-class and hardworking families, and that's what this bill is all about.
Listen, I encourage debate. I don't mind people disagreeing with what I believe in and how I see things. That's fine. But when your disagreement is rooted in a lie, for example, Republicans are going to cut entitlement benefits to give tax cuts to billionaires, that is a 110% fabrication of what's happening here. And that is where it bothers me the most. Because, see, if you're going to fight me, can you at least make sure your argument is rooted in an actual fact? And it's not. And the disturbing fact is not even that they're paying protesters to show up and create chaos and disrupt these Republican events. Is that they believe by paying protesters to do this, that it's a legitimate thing.
All right, so let's get over the obvious hurdle. If I have to pay you to show up, you are not legit. You are a plant.
Well, Chris, you're paid to host your show. Does that mean you are not legit?
Not enough.
Does that mean your views are not your views?
Not enough. Not enough. I might as well be doing it for free. Bad comparison.
Maybe not.
Go ahead.
Maybe not quite as much as CNN, but at the end of the day, you're paid for your views. Tucker Carlson is paid for his views. Rachel Maddow is paid for her views, right? You guys are paid the big bucks, right? Is it not then reasonable to say that a protester can't be paid a few $100s to go out to a rally to support a cause that they agree with? So is Tugger sincere when he's getting paid tens of millions and a protester is not sincere when they're getting paid hundreds? I feel like I just question this idea that getting paid money to demonstrate in any way delegitimizes you and your beliefs.
All right. So I think the only question that matters after hearing what he had to say is, do I believe it is right to pay a protester to show up to a Republican town hall and create chaos and disruption? No, I don't believe in that, actually. Now, I do understand the law, and they have a right to do that. In worst case scenarios, they'll just get kicked out by the police. Okay, fine. So let's just talk politically here. It's a bad investment because ultimately, who decides elections? Is it the people on the left or is it the people on the right? It's neither. It's the people in the center, the people who are not really choosing sides. They're just focusing on the issues. Do you really think that disrupting town halls is going to appease those individuals? Absolutely not. All right, so let's go to our next story. Trump has met with Zelensky while they were at Pope Francis' funeral. Obviously, this has everybody's attention because we know how things were left the last time Trump spoke to Zelensky, which was in the Oval Office.
The White House Communications Director Stephen Chung said President Trump and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky met privately, briefly today for what he called a productive meeting. We've also heard from Zelensky himself, who similarly called this a productive meeting, said that if things go on track as they hope they do, that meeting could actually be historic, again, happening on the sidelines of Pope Francis's funeral in Rome amongst dozens of world leaders, as you had noted.
Yeah, so here's the big update. Zelensky still hasn't signed the rare earth agreement like he said he would. Putin continues to tell Trump one thing and do another. And at this point, the president is getting frustrated because these people are jacking around and lives are continuing to be lost in the process, which led to this post from the president this morning. And he's heated. He says this: no matter what deal I make with respect to Russia and Ukraine, no matter how good it is, even if it's the greatest deal ever made, the failing New York Times will speak badly of it. And he basically goes on to say that the New York Times is writing articles that supports the idea that Ukraine should get back territory, including, I suppose, Crimea, and other ridiculous requests in order to stop the killing that is worse than anything since World War II. And he goes on to remind people of something. Why doesn't this lightweight reporter say that it was Obama who made it possible for Russia to steal Crimea from Ukraine without even a shot being fired? With all that being said, there was no reason for Putin to be shooting missiles into civilian areas, cities, and towns over the last few days. It makes me think that maybe he doesn't want to stop the war. He's just tapping me along and has to be dealt with differently through banking or secondary sanctions. Too many people are dying. Now, in regards to Crimea, the timing is so interesting here because MSDNC just interviewed John Kerry, and let's just say he didn't like their line of questioning as it pertains to Crimea. Take a look.
You were Secretary of State when Russia annexed Crimea, and I want to ask
when
you...
They stated
they stated, yeah.
We did not allow them to annex it.
Right.
And we stood up against it and called it against international law. Yeah, they said it. But that doesn't, under international law, that does not make it theirs.
Can I ask you what?
So clearly he has PTSD from Crimea being taken away from Ukraine under his leadership. And that actually reminds me of what's wrong with Democrats is they never want to admit failure when it's on their side of things. Everybody knows that. But I think what's more important today is that this war is still not ended. It continues to drag on. And for Zelensky, he may not even be prepared emotionally, mentally to even end this war because he's in too deep. And we know there's so much corruption that's happened on his side of things. No one ever wants to talk about it. Fine. But then you're dealing with Putin, who he doesn't care. I mean, if people are going to continue to die, so be it. He'll keep dragging this on. So maybe Trump has to try something different at this point. Now, let's get your guys' reaction in the comments section below about some of these new details and how the media is continuing to be delusional about not only the judge obstructing justice, but they're still claiming that there's no evidence that Mr. Garcia is MS-13. And throw in there while you're at it that they're now calling for the impeachment of President Trump. Let me know what you guys think about that in the comment section below. Now, yesterday, Pam Bondi exposed the corrupt judge for who she really is by disclosing some important details that you're going to want to hear. If you miss out on that video and more stories from yesterday, all you have to do is click on it because it's coming up right now.